And you have done it. You have made it to another episode of All Aware Podcast with your host, myself. I am Nathan Roshawn. And on tonight's program, we have a great one for you. You're going to want to tune in for the full length of this program because I'm bringing on Charles Key. Charles Key is a former Oklahoma state representative with over 2 decades of service in the House of Representatives. He's an investigative journalist and he's the author of Stolen Government and the final report to the Oklahoma City bombing that happened in 1995 when he was serving his term there in the Oklahoma legislature. Charles has made his life work exposing political corruption, and he's been a great advocate for government transparency. His fearless leadership of the Oklahoma City bombing investigative committee challenged the official narrative that we were being given at the time, uncovering shocking details that have remained hidden for many years. All of this you can find in his final report. You can get that online. It's a huge, thick book that talks about everything, all the evidence, all the facts, all the figures of what really happened at the Oklahoma City bombing. Whether you're a political enthusiast, an advocate for transparency, or just curious about the untold stories behind major political events, this episode will be valuable to you and you don't want to miss it. So stay tuned to All Aware Podcast. I am Nathan Roshawn and we will be back in less than 60 seconds.
From the corners of the internet to the wave signals transmitting through your brain, you are now sinking into All Aware, preparing transmission signals. Stand by.
Silent scan.
Broadcasting off the grid in Central Texas. This is the All Aware Podcast.
Thank you.
Please stand by for your host, Nathan Roshawn.
This is All Aware Podcast with Nathan Roshawn. Like, follow, and subscribe and help spread awareness. Together, we become All Aware. www.allawarepodcast.com.
Hey, and welcome back to another episode of All Aware with Nathan Roshawn. We have Charles Key with us today. Charles Key is a former Oklahoma State representative, investigative journalist, and author of Stolen Government and the Final Report, which outlined kind of what happened during the Oklahoma City bombing back in 1995. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on Charles. How are you today, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for the patience and connecting here. I know we've been shooting back and forth about a couple of weeks now. And the first time, I don't even remember what happened. And then the second time I was in Mexico and I had some travel delays. So it didn't work out. And then so here we are. So third time's a charm, man.
Yeah, it just happens. Everybody's busy and stuff,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I'm glad you had tonight open so we can go into some of this stuff. So Charles, if you don't mind just kind of telling the audience here what kind of a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background and what came about in 95 with Oklahoma. Maybe we can start there.
Well, I served 18 total years in the Oklahoma House of Representatives, 2 different tenures. I was elected in 86 and served for 12 years, and I'm a Republican. At that time, the Democrats were in the majority. And the other 6 years that I served were from 2006 to 2012. The Republicans had come back in the majority. I really didn't intend to run again, but there were some individuals running for my seat that others didn't like. And so they thought they were too liberal. And so they called me up and said, "Hey, Key, you got to run again. We got to run." "What for?" "Well, there's a guy running that's a rhino Republican," is what they said. And
Right.
they said, we got enough of those up here already. So the real deciding factor was being in the majority. I hadn't experienced that. And I thought, well, at least I maybe can get some stuff done. And during that time, that's when this book kind of came out and really got to be a bigger thing here in Oklahoma and some other places around the country. And so, yeah, so I served a total of 18 years. The bombing happened in the middle of my first tenure. It was just something I felt compelled to call the federal government on because they were covering up a lot of what really happened and their involvement in it, their failure to stop it. And so that became kind of a mission. I just felt, I basically had a talk with myself and thought, well, can I turn away from this? And I just couldn't. I
Right.
couldn't turn away. So the rest is history, as they say. And we ended up having a formal citizens um, group called the Oklahoma Bombing Investigation Committee. It actually had a longer name than that because we actually caused a county grand jury to be impaneled as something that can be done in Oklahoma by simply circulating a petition, getting the right number of signatures, and we did that.
Right.
And it was big, big news in Oklahoma for the 4 and 5 years after the bombing for a long time because there were trials going on and this grand jury and et cetera, et cetera. So it was, and it happened right here, of course. So it was just a big news story for a long time.
So let's just so for some of those people that don't, I don't know, maybe they're younger or they don't realize about this bombing. So this happened in April of 1995. A guy named Timothy McVeigh. The story on the streets, let's say, is that Timothy McVeigh had some kind of domestic terrorist plot to blow up the city building there in Oklahoma, and apparently was succeeded in it when he parked a truck outside with massive amounts of detonating material in it, and it caused major damage to the structure and took lives of some of those people that are inside the building, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the official story. A
Right.
lot of that is actually not true or accurate, as we found out. For example, the bomb that was in that truck, a bunch of ammonium nitrate with diesel fuel, not only do we know that was what they had in the truck, but we know from many experts, including the world's top experts, gave us their official opinion and wrote some more extensive reports that we included in our report, showing how that could not have possibly happened for an ammonium nitrate bomb. And as one of those experts, whose name was Sam Cohen, he's the inventor of the neutron bomb.
Hmm.
And he said not only could that not have happened, it wouldn't really matter how much ammonium nitrate you put out there because it's only going to blow the face off of a building. So to continue to talk about that point for a minute, in this report, the last 155 pages are actually an appendix of all kinds of documents and what have you, including the ATF and FBI field reports that show that they were tracking people before the bombing happened. They knew this was going to take place,
Hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. But also, it gets into the issue of other back to bombings, other bombings that have happened over about 3 or 4 decades now, that and before the bombing, of course, in which similar things were done, or sometimes the exact same things were done. And so we know how successful or lack of success those had. No, the point I'm making here is whether or not an ammonium nitrate bomb, what kind of damage can it do? And one of the experts that we had in our report is the world's expert. His name is Brigadier General Benton Parton. I think he just passed away about a year ago. He was the Air Force and the military's main guy that did all the testing for all kinds of explosive devices at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, where they primarily did all this testing. But he conducted all the and was oversaw all the testing, and they would build concrete reinforced structures of all types, and then proceed to blow those up with certain various types of explosive devices to see what works and what doesn't. And
Right.
so you have that, plus you have Bogota, Colombia, where some individuals pulled up an ammonium nitrate bomb in front of a embassy, and it just blew the face off the building. It doesn't have the power to take out a header beam or a column.
Right.
And so you also had the Saudi Arabia Khobar Towers bombing years back, which they pulled up a tanker truck full of ammonium nitrate in front of that Khobar Towers building. It's about the size of the Murrah building, maybe a little bit, maybe slightly bigger, and it only blew the face off of it. One expert told me, he said, those foreign countries like that, they don't have the building standards that we have. So a lot of those buildings won't even have rebar in them or anything. And I always remember him telling me, he goes, you could take a pencil and grind it into the walls of some of those buildings. That's how poor the concrete is, making the point that not only the ammonium nitrate bomb can't do that kind of damage, but it also has to do with those foreign buildings are even less structurally sound than what we build over here. So back to the Murrah building, and when we see demolitions of buildings here in the States, we know that the professional companies will go in there and they'll either strap tightly C4 onto a column or they'll drill into it. I learned all this during the course of our investigation. I
Wow.
actually I actually thought the damage to the building and what we call the science wouldn't really bear that much fruit, but as it's turned out, it probably is the biggest proof of all the categories of information related to the bombing. So we had the bombing, I mean the building and the science of it, the explosive devices and all that. Another category would be the witnesses to McVeigh and others, and who those John Does might be, and what the witnesses said. And then you have another chapter on prior knowledge. There is a wealth of information that the government knew this was going to happen, and they didn't get it stopped. The reason we know they knew it was going to happen is because it's been discovered it was actually a fake sting operation
I
that
was
was
going to
put
ask you that. I was going to ask you that.
that was put together after Waco to try to make them look good because they almost
Yep.
got axed.
I was going to ask you about Waco. It's because it was exactly a year after, which is kind of weird to me there.
Yeah. And Ruby Ridge, the Ruby
Yeah.
Ridge and Waco all happened right there successively.
Yep.
And the ATF looked very, very bad because of it.
So
So go ahead.
I was just going to ask, it was more of maybe a way to cover up government mistakes or government things that weren't too good in the public eye, so that they could say, okay, look, this stuff is happening elsewhere, other stuff's going on, and we're taking care of it, kind of thing.
Yep. Yep. Just to make them look good. I mean, there's all kinds of documentation about this prior knowledge.
Yeah.
One of the ones I like, that I've sent to people occasionally is just a one page document. It's got a lot of redactions in it, but it clearly is saying in there the agent that put that little memo together. He's saying we talked to these people, and then there's a lot of redaction. We did this, did that, and it's clear that the Oklahoma City bombing was a fake sting operation put together. Da, da, da. I mean, just says it right out
Yeah.
clear. So yeah, it's a terrible thing. It's people don't realize just how out of control our government really is. I have to say, they're realizing it more today and in our recent times more than they have in my lifetime that I can, or any time I can think about it in our history. But they really are. It's much worse than what we know of. And when I was in office, it kind of came around to my thinking that, and this was before the bombing, but and afterwards, especially, that when we see these things happen, we have to me, I have to look at it and go, what else is going on right now that we don't know about yet,
Right.
or or we'll never know about? And there's lots of stuff like that. This what comes out publicly is only a portion of what is really going on that shouldn't be going on within our government.
Yeah, the left hand's doing something over here. What's the right hand doing over there? We only see one side
Yeah.
usually. Yeah. It's kind of crazy because this kind of leads you mentioned 9/11 and you got the final report complete sent before that. There's a lot of similarities with that as well with the building, like Building 7 that just randomly came down. It had no strike of any aircraft or anything like that. The Pentagon, I know a guy who knows somebody who was working at the Pentagon with cleanup and things like that, and that was kind of strange too. Looked more of like a missile strike, but we were told an airplane hit that as well. So is this just uh are all these just kind of maybe not false flags, but maybe they're, like you said, ways that they're covering up other things that are happening in other places, or are these legit incidents that we're having, in your opinion or in your research?
Well, I mean, the Oklahoma City bombing would not have happened if they hadn't put together a fake sting operation. I mean, that's just the way it is.
And
The
if
fact,
Waco didn't happen, it probably wouldn't have happened, right?
well, I mean, Waco could have happened, and then they could have not decided, hey, we got to do something to cover our butts and make ourselves look good. So let's create this fake sting operation, and we'll go, aha, boom, we caught these guys that are getting ready to set off a bomb, and we're doing good work out here, something like that. Well, they didn't have to do that, for one thing. I mean, that wasn't necessary for them to do that. They did it because they had screwed up in the past, Waco, Ruby
Hmm.
Ridge. And so what happened with the Oklahoma City bombing? Well, they had a fake sting operation, but somebody changed the deal on them. We can assume it was McVeigh.
Mm.
Maybe it was a John Doe, but it was somebody that was part of the deal that thought they were really going to pull off a bombing. And I mean, I'm assuming there are those, and there is information that suggests that McVeigh was part of the undercover effort,
That's what I
and
was wondering. Yep.
and the John Doe number two for that matter. Because what we found out is we've got a lot of ATF field documents and some FBI, and there's probably at least three, and there may be who knows how many, 4, 5, 6 confidential informants, because the documents will say CI 782 or whatever the number is, said XYZ, or it'll redact part of that. So we've got documents that indicate people that were inside Elohim City, which is a place out in eastern Oklahoma where a lot of these radical people like that would hang out, and other documents that show that they had undercover agents inside, and with McVeigh and with Andy Strassmeyer and others that were part of this or on the periphery of it. So their own documents show us this, that they had this going on. There's a document that shows it's an ATF field document, and at the time they had, a few months before the bombing, they had contacted the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation and said, can we borrow your plane, which Oklahoma had a plane, and they said, can we use your pilot and plane to fly over and do some surveillance and take some pictures and stuff, because they were planning on going into this small little town called Elohim City, right on the border with Arkansas. So when they were doing that, so they're up there flying. So the report shows this, and I'll just narrate it so it sounds more natural. They're up there and they're talking to the pilot. Everybody's talking while they're flying about who knows what, all kinds of things. Well, while they're talking, the pilot says, well, as they're telling them what they're doing and why they're doing it and what have you, he goes, well, the FBI has some informants in there, don't you? And they said, no, we didn't know that. And so blah, blah, blah. There's a little dialogue about that. So, and a lot of things like that. There's the problem is they never get held accountable, really.
Right.
That's the real problem. And that's what things we're facing today, is holding the government accountable for things that they've done or not done that they should have done. And that's why this keeps happening over and over again. You get sloppiness on the part of government employees, And then in some cases, there's something more nefarious going on.
Yeah.
It appears to me, and many others are starting to suspect that. I've already bought into it that there are people doing things within our government just for power and maybe money. Maybe it's a money angle too. But there are people
Yeah.
doing those kind of things.
Yeah, I would tend to agree from stuff that I've looked at and researched too, and that's kind of things we talk about on here a lot on this program too, is the conspiracies or the what they call them, but the different reasons behind some of the stuff that's going on, and a lot of these events, like the ones we're talking about, like 9/11, and some of the other ones that have happened, just little operations and things that we're told on the media one thing, but it doesn't add up. And the weird thing is when you start questioning and asking most public officials, well, hey, this doesn't add up. What's behind that? It gets pushed back or censored, or you start getting um, quiet, silence with a lot of the stuff. And I think you said it earlier. We're starting to see now. It's like coming to a head with all this stuff where we're starting to see. It's getting to the point where so much has been covered up, covered up, covered up that it's bursting through the seams now to where you can't cover everything up as much anymore. And we've got certain people in government, like yourself and like maybe Trump and other people in that cabinet and just real patriots that are starting to talk out, and it's gotten to the point now where, in my opinion, we're able to talk about this. If we wanted to do this, what, 10, 15 years ago, it probably wouldn't have been a good idea, right?
Well, yeah, and matter of fact, it's going to be 30 years next year. And so I've seen, as I've had the benefit of looking back and going through that time frame like that, I used to say when we were in the middle of the bombing those several years, that what was interesting to me when I would talk on an interview like this or speak before a group or something, that the most interesting aspect of it was what I call the psychology. What I mean by that is how people reacted to what they were hearing when I or others would talk about it. And so back then, I kind of divided it up. You've got about a third of the people that like put their hands over their ears. They don't want to hear anything. They'll run away from it. They'll just do anything to not even hear it.
Yeah.
And then you have the other groups, ones that they want to know, and then others that they want to deny it. They'll fight you. They'll fight you. They'll take the other side. And so that's been the basic template that I've observed over time, except now today, a dramatic change. There's a lot more people that are going, yeah, there's something wrong, something rotten in Denmark, as the old saying goes. There's something really wrong going on here. And it's good, but we've let it go so far. I'm not sure how far we are down the road, but there's a lot of good signs that we're going to push back and maybe correct a lot of this stuff. But we've let it go too far. And one thing I've learned in my experience on planet Earth and being in politics for 30 years or longer, actually, is that nothing's going to change until people wake up enough and go make the change happen.
Right.
It'll just get worse and worse and maybe get to the point of no return, or it'll get to a point where it's so bad, there's a lot of suffering and, collateral damage, but we may be able to still take it back and push it back to where something close to what we've had in the past. But we're at a point where, you can't wait any longer. You can't kick the can down the road any longer.
Yeah, I agree. So what would you say, if I can ask this, what do you think the biggest barriers to transparency in government are right now that people do not realize?
Boy, I wrote
Is that loaded?
That's a
Is that
loaded question. Yeah. And like as we were talking before we got started, I did write this book, Stolen Government, and it really goes to that. And the real answer is there's a lot of things that are wrong that we could point to, and that many of us would recognize. So It's really hard to say this is the one thing. But I would say this is one of the one things that'll make a difference, because what that will do, what I'm talking about in this book, it will defang the bad actors in legislative bodies. And so let me drill down a little bit on that. What stolen government refers to is how the rules are used in legislative bodies to control everything. And there are 30 states that have the rules crafted the way we have them here in Oklahoma. Texas is another one. 30 states that have this more of a, you could call it a liberal set of rules that let the Speaker of the House on the House side and the Speaker pro tem on the Senate side, those are the two top guys, lets them have all power to do practically anything.
Hmm.
Now, the rules don't specifically say that the Speaker of the House has the right to do anything he wants. What they do is they lack language that limit the Speaker. Like in our Constitution, those that know how the Constitution works, it's written to limit the federal government, is what it's done.
Yes, right.
It says you can only do these things. Well, in a similar way, rules in other states are stronger, and they require bills to be heard. You can't just ignore it or refuse to hear it. 20 states are like that. 30 states have this problem where it lets the Speaker decide if a bill even gets a hearing.
Hmm.
So with that, so to keep from getting bogged down on other things, let me put it like this. Here in Oklahoma, we've got 101 House seats in the whole state. That's kind of a good number to go by. You can do division at 100.
Right.
In every district, there's like 38,000 people. So 38,000 people in 101 districts. Every 2 years, they vote to send somebody up to the House of Representatives. A lot of times it's the same person. And then those people are supposed to go up there and represent them. But what happens is you have some chairman of a committee from wherever he's from in the state can just say no to the person that you sent up to represent you, or any number. And he doesn't have to give a reason. He doesn't have to give an accounting for it. When I was a freshman way back in the day, I even had a lot of knowledge about our government, our history. It was just something I cared about and learned a lot. My family was really good about giving us a good education, making sure we got one. But I did not know about rules, how the rules operated. It was kind of a foreign subject, and that's the way it is for most people. So when you get up there, you have a chairman. I had a bill that was not being put on the committee agenda, and there's only like 3 or 4 weeks in which you have committee meetings. So I go to that chairman. I said, "Hey, I know she haven't put the bill on the agenda yet. I'd like to have it heard." Well, he informed me he wasn't going to hear it. And honestly, I don't remember that first time what the reason was, because it becomes the norm. It's the norm to get bills not heard.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they won't hear them. And it's usually because a special interest group that writes a lot of checks to legislators doesn't want it heard.
Hmm.
I'll tell a quick story about that. Just this year, we had a bill that it was actually carried by the guy that took my place in the House. He's the floor leader in the House. He was the author. He got it passed out of the House. So it goes over to the Senate, and the senator that had it got it passed out of the Senate committee. Now it's waiting to go to the Senate floor. That's where it's at. The bill is called the Patient's Bill of Rights Act.
Okay.
And it grew out of a lot of people that had loved ones that were in the hospital that died, or other problems that happened, and they couldn't talk to their loved ones. They couldn't really help them or do a lot of things. So they had created this group and was asking for some kind of redress of government. And so this bill, we were talking a little bit about the bombing a minute ago. Things are starting to kind of come out. And what we're finding here in Oklahoma, it's probably in a few other places, they've had so much free leeway to do what they want. They're starting to say things that they used to keep quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So back to my story, this senator is having a meeting with all of these people. It's kind of an open meeting over in the Senate, the people that care about this. And what had been going on, it passed out of committee. It got on the special interest group's radar. particularly the Hospital Association here in Oklahoma. And so they started pushing to get it all edited and amended before it even went to the floor. And they had a rewrite of it, and it gutted the bill. I've seen this happen many times. It gutted the bill, but it still had its name, Patients' Bill of Rights.
Right.
So they wanted it to go forward like that. So there's this discussion going on with all these, and the Senate author is there, and she's real frustrated. And she's telling them this is the way it is. And they said, well, why would we want to do that? It's just going to gut the bill. It won't mean anything after that. And she, in frustration, she said, well, the Hospital Association doesn't want it heard, so it's not going to get heard, meaning if we don't do this. And so others told me about, they've really talked about that. And it reveals the way things really work in a legislative body. You'll have special interest groups that have a lot of sway, which a lot of them do, but you'll have big donors.
Right.
Those have the ear of your legislator. And so that's the problem. You know, this problem that we're talking about right now, this ability to just deny somebody to have the right to have a bill heard. It's the same template up in Washington, D.C., and up there it's a lot worse.
I bet.
When I wrote this book, I thought I wanted to talk about the federal part of it because I knew it was a whole big can of worms that could be talked about. And then I wanted to talk about the money side of it. Others have written books about that, but I didn't want to rewrite the whole thing about that. I just wanted to make the point about how much money is in all of this and how much it has an influence on it. And I decided not to because this one simple little issue within the rules have a whole bunch more stuff in there. This one simple issue, people don't, first of all, they don't even know about it. But once they hear about it, it takes a little time for it to sink in. Think about this. If you're the Speaker of the House, you get your power by having the ability to do all these things. Decide if a bill gets heard or not, period.
Right.
And you give that power to the chairman, and they get their position from you by agreeing to be part of the team that's going to make these decisions, who gets to be heard and who doesn't, what gets to be law and what doesn't. But that's not all they have the right to. They also appoint every chairman of the committees, every vice chairman, and they also make up the membership of the committees. It's not like at the federal level where if you have seniority or this or, you know, or the minority party gets to choose their members on the committee or anything like that. No, the Speaker chooses all of that, and he assigns the bills to committees. There's not any rule that says education's got to go to education or agriculture's got to go to agriculture. Now, usually they go to those committees, but there's a lot of games they can play and a lot of tricks of the trade they'll use. Like if there's a bill, sometimes bills are there that already have a lot of publicity or a significant amount, and you've got a lot of people behind them. So it's not quite as easy to just deny a hearing on the bill. They'll still do that and fade the heat on that. But when there's a lot of knowledge about a bill and there's a lot of public behind it, then one of the tricks they'll use is they'll assign it to 2 or 3 committees to make it more difficult. You got to get out of all those committees to move forward. Or they'll put it in the Rules Committee, which is a committee not just for the rules. It's a committee, it's called the Black Hole Committee. If you want to kill a bill, it'll get put over there. You know, and it might be about education or something. Now, my bill was about the rules, so it was appropriate to go in there, but you get the point. This is a very common thing. All these things I'm talking about, very, very common.
So we're basically being run by like you said, special interests, corporations, and different things, unions, and different types of special groups that can buddy just like in a corporation. You know, you buddy with somebody and you partner with them, and then they're going to do what you say. So it's not really for the people because of all this, and it seems like that makes it really easy to corrupt something when you have all those avenues of, you know, you got the one guy who can tell everybody what to do, and then you know, you create all these groups that you have to funnel this and this and that and this, and there's no real oversight, it doesn't sound like, in a lot of that. I'm starting to get the picture of how it's so easily that we get in these situations like we've been in for, I don't know, 100 plus years,
Yeah, who knows how long it's
a
been this way.
thousand.
Well, yeah, and probably thousands actually, government. I was watching a podcast or a YouTube program just the other day, and it was talking about how, government's been like this forever.
It's
And
Rome. Yeah.
yeah. So, but another angle on this is, for example, the money side of it. Here's another thing that just, and you made me think of this because you said, you get the picture of it the more you talk about it and think about it. Think about this. So somebody like me or you, we decide we want to run for office. Well, there's certain things you do. You have to file for office. You got to set up a campaign account, and it might be Friends of Charles Key or, Charles Key for House or something like that. Well, you set that up. And so you've got that PAC, that political action committee that you've created to receive donations and expenditures. You got to report how you did it and what you did and everything. Well, people don't realize, they know about these dark money PACs and various things like that. But as a state rep, I can go create another PAC and call it, the PAC that's going to solve all the problems of the world PAC. They like these
Right.
PACs, these really great names, like the Patriot Act and stuff. And that will happen, especially when people want to move up the ladder and they're there for their own primary benefit,
Yeah.
or they get in these leadership positions. They will create multiple PACs. The special interest groups and large donors will dump lots of money in those. They control those PACs. And then, for example, the Speaker of the House, this became a big issue in Oklahoma here earlier this year when they had an election for the future Speaker Pro Tem, the guy coming in this coming year for the Pro Tem.
Sure.
And so that guy, I have to remind you to tell you a little story about him, but that guy had multiple PACs. So he was giving out $5,000 checks to a bunch of different senators, and nobody would ever admit to this, but so that they would be beholden to him to vote for him to be the next Speaker Pro Tem. This guy in particular, last name was McCourtney, and he was a real rhino Republican. And the grassroots came out and beat him in a primary and runoff just a few months ago. Also beat that other senator that had the Patients' Bill of Rights bill that I was talking about,
Yeah.
because she was another one that was really on people's radar for playing fast and loose with the special interest groups too much. But my point here is that then they have these PACs and they can start divvying out money. If you just have one PAC and you can only and contributions have a limit about how much somebody can give one person, well, then that really does make some limitations, even though it can still get out of hand. But if you have multiple PACs, and then let's say the maximum contribution per is 5,000, well, then PAC, special interest, the hospital association, they could write a $5,000 check out to each one of those PACs.
Mm.
You have control over them. You got a bunch of money there, so you can give it out to people. You can help new members get elected, people that are running for office that aren't there yet, and they're going to feel beholden to you also because you helped them get there. And so
Right.
this is part of the game.
Loyalty.
Yeah.
Yep. Loyalty thing.
So this right here, though, here's how you fix this, and we're going to do this here in Oklahoma. We're going to do a statewide citizens petition where you do the signatures, force a bill to be brought to the people to vote on, and it's going to say something almost exactly like this: any duly elected member of the House or Senate is prohibited from denying another duly elected member of the House or Senate from having their bill heard in committee or on the House or Senate floor if they put in writing they want the bill to be heard. Period. Case closed. When you do that, they can no longer kill bills, do favors, or any of that kind of stuff. It defangs them.
But can they still gut the bill and put their own jargon
Yeah.
in there and still have the name, and it's a whole different deal?
No, because see the way they do it now, and like the example I was giving you, they're holding the bill back,
Hmm.
so they've got control of it, and they're saying you need to change this way if you want it heard. But if I can have my bill heard by simply saying, Mr. Chairman, I want this bill heard, number so and so and so and so, boom, he must do that. And then it
Gotcha.
has to be above board for all to see. Then if they want to change it and gut it even, which happens, out in the open a lot too, they would have to do it in front of the whole world. They have to do it in front of the legislature and the whole world to see. They couldn't hide and keep it kind of secretive. And that's what's really being missed here is when you can say no to somebody on a bill, not only do you not get it heard and talked about, but you don't have a vote so you can see how everybody voted for it. So
Right.
then you have members. So you and I get elected to go up there and we say we're going to do all this, that, and the other, and we're going to not do these things and blah blah blah. And then a lot of that stuff gets hidden because you don't even have a vote in the first place. I got one more story if you want to hear it, but I can take a break if you want to ask a question or two. But
Sure, sure. Yeah, well, I mean, the thing on this line of talk that we're talking about, the one thing I would like to know is basically, how do we fix that's great for the bill, but how do we fix the lobbyist problem that we have in the state level and on the federal level? Do you have any ideas on
yeah,
how we can fix that type of stuff?
yeah. Here's what's interesting is you've also got this is pretty crazy too when you think about it. So you got lobbyists running out the wazoo all over the place, every state capital at the federal level, city and county now they're down there in big numbers. And so things there's also lobbyists, we'll call them lobbyists, from the state agencies that go up and lobby legislators just like private lobbyists. So here you have government agencies lobbying for more stuff or variations on that. On one hand, and this is a big deal in Oklahoma, it was several different times in my 40 years watching all this stuff and being involved in it. So what happened is we tried to pull the reins in on state agency lobbyists and the leadership. Well, what do? They won't hear the bill. That's what they did. Wouldn't hear the bill.
True.
Well, you had a
Okay.
bunch of us legislators, and this was Republicans in the majority trying to fix things, and you got your own people fighting you. And so we would argue about that. So well, because of the lack of time, let's hit to the point of this. The real point is lobbyists, whoever they are, state agency or private, they do a service, but they also have the problem that comes with them. For state agencies, you ought to just simply prohibit them from coming up unless a legislative body, say a committee, a legislator, or the whole House or the whole Senate wants somebody to come up. There needs to be a formal process where they request that, and it's all out in the open. Nothing behind closed doors anymore. But on the
Yeah.
private side, what we've thought about doing is we've thought about making changes here in Oklahoma. We've thought about just prohibiting lobbyists during legislative session altogether. You know,
Okay.
they couldn't do anything. That might be too far to go, but you're going to have to do that. But the first thing that we can do, and this is one of our goals here in Oklahoma to do, not just in our state, but help get this thing started around the country, and that is to put the brakes on all this dark money stuff that comes up.
Absolutely. Yes.
And nobody knows who they are, where they came from, if they're lying through their teeth or not, and et cetera, et cetera. There's no reason to allow these multiple political action committees to get started and controlled by legislators and used the way they are. So it's not going to be an easy thing to do because you've got both federal and state laws and issues there. But that's what we need to do. We need to prohibit these extra uh, uh, packs that get created. And then one other thing I'll say real quick, and I want to tell you this story because it's real revealing. The other thing is um, putting a limit on the amount. There's been talk about public financing of campaigns, and believe me, I'm a staunch conservative. I'm more of a conservative libertarian. and a constitutionalist is what I really am.
Yeah.
But that really makes me consider that because how bad the money problem is. But let me tell you this story. So one of the things that'll happen is, so we had this guy, we got to debate this issue of stolen government, open government and stolen government on the House floor the first day of session in February of 2011. And when that one of the guys that got up and debated against it, I was the last one to debate because it was my issue, it was my amendment, so I was the one that got to close it out. So we had these two guys that were part of the Republican leadership that got up and made the last two debates, and you can actually go to the House site right now. Somebody could look it up if they knew the day and everything, and watch what I'm getting ready to tell you. So we had one of the guys get up. He's a good old rural ag guy from southwestern Oklahoma. A good guy. You'd love to be around him. He's fun to be around and everything, just like most people are up there.
Sure.
They choose what sides they're going to be on, and so this guy chose the leadership side a long time ago. So he gets up and debate, and he goes, "You know what? We got this." I try to talk like the rural guys when I can, when I'm imitating him. He goes, we all have these constituents that come up to us after we get elected. This is exactly what he said, almost verbatim. Well, they come up to us and they said, here's an idea. Come up and run this as a bill, and I supported you and everything. And they kind of box you into a corner. And he said, some of those ideas are really dumb and stupid, or you don't want to carry them. And he goes, we need those committee chairmen, and we might have to go up to them and say, look, hey, I didn't really want this bill heard. I didn't want to run this bill. It was a constituent. I think it's a dumb idea. If you just tell me you're not going to hear it, wink, wink, and then I can go back and tell my constituent I couldn't get the bill heard. He said that on the House floor. And I said, thank you when he did that, because, and I put this in the book, and there's some other ones like it. That's what actually happens. Deals are made like that, and then we tell the constituents something altogether. This is a big deal, and it needs to be changed. If people want to know that their people are going up there and telling them the truth and doing what they say they're going to do, we need to change this. But actually, there's a lot of good people that go up there, and they see how the system works, and you got to make basically two decisions. You either get on board, or if you don't, and play the game, or if you don't, then you're going to be marginalized.
You'll be outcasted, yeah.
And a lot of people just try to keep a low profile and survive it all and try to get some things done. There's some like me, there's a few, and there's some that did a bang up better job than I did, that go up there and just give the leadership absolutely hell, and just give it to them. And make some headway in some respects like that, but that's what you're faced with. You're faced with a big machine that is not on your side.
So you can go in with the best of intentions and wanting to change the dynamic of things, and when you get in there, it sounds like the rules kind of dictate what you do, and then you got your buddy system and the loyalty system, and it seems like it just gets out of whack to where, unless you are a hardened individual or somebody who doesn't care what people think of them, and you can step out and do that just from our conversation, it's sounding like that's why we have a lot of the problems in all levels, local, state, and federal government. You just get in there, and you become part of this machine. So how do we? I can hear kind of how we obviously need to change the machine from the inside. We need people inside that are more like you, that are more like these other gentlemen and ladies you speak of, that are making change and kind of pushing back on that machine. But what can an average everyday citizen do on the outside to help you guys on the inside so that we can transform this? Is it more just awareness, or are there specific steps that we can do that you know of?
Yeah, it has to be, the very first thing has to be awareness. And another way to say that is education. So, I don't need to sell books to make any money. I really don't. But people need to get this book. It's easy. It's right at 100 pages. It's we made it easy to read and understand. And as I'm saying, we kept it really focused just on this one particular rule because it's like the Lord of the Rings. It's the ring to rule all rings, is what it is. When you take that out, it defangs them and they can't play the games and give us somebody else's government instead of our government. It's our government. We need to make things happen the way we want them to happen, and they're not because of this and other things like it. This is
True.
the big deal. See, the Speaker of the House and the pro tem will not have the power if we take this away. And we're going to do it in Oklahoma. You know,
Yeah.
knock on. We,
Yeah.
it's a big issue in Oklahoma. It's becoming real well known in Oklahoma, and so I hope we can be a good example for the rest of the states. I've been working with other people around in certain other states where they work with other legislators, and I've been on some Zoom calls where there's a lot of legislators, and they're like what we were just talking about. They're afraid to speak out, and they know they can talk on a call like that, or if I talk to them personally, but they tell me their stories, which I've seen and experienced myself in my own experience. The stories, if they raise too much cane about something, then you'll get marginalized.
Yeah.
And some people are willing to fight that battle and live that way and just, you know, fight a fight ahead like that. And others aren't. And I've seen a lot of people, they quit real quick, sometimes after one term, because they just can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we can change it, and we must. We actually have to change it.
Yeah.
We have no choice. And we're really having this come to our full full awareness now at the times we're in. It's clear we must make some changes.
Absolutely. And you have, so that book that you were showing is called Stolen Government. And where could they get that book at?
You go to Amazon, and you can go to my website also. So you can go to website and look it up. It's easy to see there. And you can go to my website, which is charleskey.com, and there's a lot of information on there, including about both of these books and both subjects, in addition to other stuff.
Do you have any social media accounts that people can reach you at, like Facebook or anything like that?
I've got a gal that helps me with that, and she's really good. I think you interfaced with her, and she's got a Facebook page set up on that also. But yeah, I think you can find everything on my website, charleskey.com. And the books you could find on Amazon very easily if you just look it up by my name or that book name.
Awesome, awesome, Charles. Well, man, there's so much more we could talk about. You're just a wealth of knowledge, and it's great getting it from someone who's been in and experienced it. A lot of what you said is things that we talk about. I've talked about with my other co-host who's not here today, Echo. And I'd love to be able to talk to you again here sometime in the future and get some more information and maybe talk more about some of these events that have happened. But I encourage everybody to go out, get that book, and I'm gonna get it myself. And hopefully we can start changing the dynamic of our country and get it back to where it used to be. So
There's one thing I want to tell you. The
absolutely.
subtitle of this book up here, you can't see it. But when I was in the minority and fighting this in the minority, I would do it every 2 years. And I started getting good publicity. The Tulsa World wrote this headline, wrote a really good article. It's great. The headline says, "Too few in control of too much." And
Mm.
I couldn't say it better. It was really a great way to make the point. There's too many, there's no way. You mentioned it earlier in this interview. The Speaker of the House, the Speaker pro tem of the Senate, we've got a governor. When you add it all up, they're making the bulk of the decisions about deciding what policy is in the state of Oklahoma. And you could just multiply that around the country, and there's not that many people that are controlling most of what happens, at the state legislative level and even the federal level. So it's the reason why our government is screwed up as bad as it is.
And those that are not representing what the people are wanting. They're representing what a small group of heavy hitters or people with money are who, those aren't the majority of our citizens, obviously,
Yeah.
So, wow. Huh. Well,
I, I I do this because I've got kids. I've got 4 kids, are grown up now, and I've got grandkids. And I got better things I'd rather be doing, but I'm doing this because I want them to be free.
yes,
Like
sir.
I've been.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you so much coming on and sharing this information and being transparent about this stuff. One of very few that do. So, like I said, you're welcome to come on anytime, and I hope we can get the information out there and get people boogieing and moving so we can change our country for the better.
I'll be glad to come back again, and I appreciate the chance to come on and talk to you. It's good to meet you.
Hey, you too, Charles. Take care, sir. And for the rest of the audience out there who watched this complete episode, thank you for watching it. And this has been another episode of All Aware, and you are all aware. Good night. Thanks, Charles.
All Aware Podcast and other shows produced by Nathan Roshawn need your support. Like, follow, and subscribe on your favorite platform. If we are not listed on a platform you think we should consider, email us at producer@truerants.net. Also be sure to visit and subscribe to our YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Apple Podcast platforms. For all other questions or comments, email us at allaware@mail.com and visit allawarepodcast.com. This episode has been a production of Truerants Network. Until next time, good night.